Welcome everybody to our April MTPD, Master Teacher Professional Development. This is a series where master teachers share things they are passionate about with their fellow colleagues in the field. And today I am absolutely delighted to have Katie Donaldson from UTeach Dallas joining us. She is the Associate Director of the UTeach Dallas program at the University of Texas at Dallas. And along with managing the program, she teaches Step 2 and co-teaches project-based instruction. Ms. Donaldson was previously a biology teacher, instructional specialist, and science facilitator in Garland, Texas, and she has been with the UTeach program for 12 years. And she did not put it in her bio, but I'm going to mention it because it's worth mentioning. She was also our outstanding master teacher of the year. So congratulations on that, Katie.
Thank you,
and today she is going to be sharing with us Practice Makes Perfect using practice-based teaching methods in the UTeach course sequence. So Katie, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
All right, welcome everyone. We have been on a journey, as we all have during the COVID season here at UTD, but our journey was all about practice-based teaching methods. So we're going to take you on a little bit of that journey and show you what we learned and how we got there, and then how we applied that to our courses, both our STEP courses and our higher level courses across the program. We're going to sort of focus in on Step 2, but the lesson that we're working on today could be applied all the way from Step 1 all the way up, and the principles that we're using can definitely be applied across the program. So we're hoping that you'll pick up some tricks today and you'll get some great ideas that you can jot down. We have a folder for you that has all the materials. So if you see it here, unless I tell you otherwise, you're going to get it and have it and be able to use it in your program, because we're all about sharing free stuff between each other. Yay! That's just how we roll. So let's talk practice makes perfect. Using practice-based teaching methods in the UTeach course sequence. Now, for some of you, you may be really well steeped in practice-based teaching methods, and you may be able to teach a course on this. So if our revelations are like old news to you, we're sorry, but we sort of saw things in a fresh way when we sort of reframed our thinking about practice-based teaching. And let me tell you a little bit about our journey, if I can get my slide to change. Well, there we go. So first off, just a little engage here. I had a few practice quotes because we got to get into that practice mindset. Practice creates confidence, and confidence empowers you. If I want anything for my students, especially my Step 2 students, as they stumble into that first lesson in a middle school, I want them to have some confidence and I want them to be empowered. So that's one of the things we were thinking about. And the other thing that we all know is true, but we don't always do, is that an ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. And that's sort of the UTeach model, right? That's in our DNA, that we're all about going out and doing, and not really just teaching from a lecture. Teaching from a lecture point of view is kind of ridiculous. So that being said, here's the question that we were asking ourselves. And I'm going to have you play with this question with me, kind of to get our brains warmed up. What basic skills, or maybe non-basic skills too, could you introduce and practice with your students that might help them be more confident and prepared in their field experiences? So I've got a Jamboard going on. If y'all will click, you will go out to this Jamboard. There's a slide for Step 1 and Step 2, if you want to think along those lines. There's a slide for CI and PBI, and there's a slide for others. So if you're in Knowing and Learning, or your research methods, or any of the other courses you want to think about this in, what could we do? How could we introduce practice? If we did introduce a practice, what should we practice, basically? Okay, for Step 1s, for Step 2s, CIs, PBIs, it's going to look a little different for the levels. So there's a tiny URL there. If y'all will jump out to that Jamboard. And just for about 2 minutes, I'm going to let you write down your thoughts on what do we need practice in as a program. And if you haven't ever used Jamboard before, just go to the side menu there, grab you a Post-it, click on Post-it, and you can type a little Post-it and put it in there. And I'm seeing them for us. Everybody, thumbs up if you have the URL already typed in. Are we good? I'll post it in the chat. Or Amin, would you post it in the chat for me?
Done. It's already done, Katie. We're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. He's like inwriting for me on the back end. So I'm going to go ahead. Let me take this screen down, and I am going to take y'all out to the Jamboard. Hang on. All right. So let's take a look at this. We've got questioning strategies. That's huge in step 2. That's like step 2 is all about inquiry. We're totally talking about that today. So thanks for like pre-doing my lesson for me. Basic classroom management. Oh, we have a lot of probing questions, informative assessment. We can put those all in the same group together. We got sort of a classroom management strand going here. We got dealing with off-task behavior, materials management. Yeah, that's almost a classroom management issue too, right? Just basic skills like stepping up and speaking, modeling lesson activities. How do you do that in front of a group of kids for the first time? So just looking at these are all the basic things that our kids struggle with at UTD. They're probably across the nation, beginning teachers are struggling with. What about our older kids? Let's take a look. Ooh, these tasks are getting deep here. Diversifying instruction, that's huge, even for veteran teachers, right? In RM, how do you present a literature review? How do you rehearse and launch lessons and lead discussions? Leading discussions is huge. Asking testable questions in RM, how would you practice that? And that is going to be important in upper level bio classes, and chemistry classes and things like that. Sequencing and timing, again, huge. They've been out in the field a few times, but that is, and then listening and facilitating. I love this because take a look. We've gone from just basically getting a question in and basic formative assessment, where we're now moving up to, are you able to listen and facilitate? Like, can you take the questioning the next step further and get what you really want to and do those higher level push them up balloons and all that. Let me see if we got anything on this last page. Productive group work. How do you run a group? That's important along all these levels. So yeah, so that's what we were thinking too as we entered this journey. Let me tell you a little bit about our journey. And again, I have to flip flop, so pardon my flip floppishness here. All right, so we've been on an improvement journey. We applied about 24 hours before the deadline for Raising Texas Teachers for the HEB scholarship, the Henry Butt Scholarship. Mary and I threw it together at the last minute. We didn't even know it existed, and we did not get accepted, unsurprisingly, for the scholarship thing, but we did get sort of inducted into their program for emerging partnerships. And so that came along with a grant for us to do a sort of like a checkup on the program, and then for us to participate in some really cool PD. Teaching Works is the name of the company that we had to PD, and y'all may be familiar with Teaching Works. Great stuff. So in 2018, we began this thing with Teaching Works and working with their high leverage practices. And they have a great website, lots of free stuff out there. I'll show you all that in a second. But this is what sort of fueled this journey and us thinking about practice-based education. So Teaching Works uses this model called the learning cycle. You may be well familiar with it. And we took a first glance at this and we were like, oh, we do this. We totally do this. We introduce things and we do a model lesson. We sort of prepare the kids, and then we go out and we enact. We enact in the field, and we're all about field-based. And then we go and we write reflections and we analyze. This is UTeach. We do this already. We got into this process, and I think for all of us, Amin and I were talking about this yesterday. The takeaway was we're not introducing material at this level. One, where we're deeply analyzing practice, and two, we were certainly not preparing them as well as we could to go out in the field. We might run a pair up with your friend and practice your engage or practice your directions for your explore, but we weren't really going deep and allowing them to prepare. So we were missing out on the prepare phase. We were all about the enact, although we were missing the coaching piece there. And then analyze. Anyway, we're working on this cycle with Teaching Works as a program. And we got stalled out in COVID, but we finished introduce and prepare now. We are going into enact, and we haven't gotten to analyze. So if my talk is a little light on that, it's because we're not there yet. It's a journey. Let me tell you about what we did and how we've implemented in the introduce and prepare phases and what that's looked like in our classes. So Teaching Works is all about a set of high leverage practices. And let me go back real quick because I want to show you. So here is the Teaching Works website, just so y'all know that these free resources are out there. This is their work of teaching. And if you look—
And Katie, I'm so sorry. Can I interject just one
yes,
quickly?
you can.
Could I just get you to zoom in, because some of them might have a difficult time. So if you just kind of zoom to, I think Control Plus, and it should at least somewhat give us a better visual of what's
There we
happening.
go.
Yeah.
Everybody needs an Amin in their life, I'm telling you guys. So So here's the work of teaching, and here's high leverage practices. And they list out all the high leverage practices that they use across the program. And so you can see these are big things like leading a group discussion. That was on somebody's board. Explaining and modeling content practices and strategies. It was on our board. Eliciting and interpreting student thinking, again, on our board. And what they have is they have specific, they call them decompositions. They've broken down the practice of eliciting and interpreting students' thinking into chunks that are manageable to use in a lesson plan. And what they do is they write lesson plans for teachers. Now, their lesson plans are centered around people who teach the methods classes, and we're a little different than that. So we were asking ourselves, what's that's going to look like in UTeach? And while I'm here, y'all can play around with this. I'm sure Amin's already stuck that in the chat, the website, so y'all can take a look. But if you look, there's support and resources, and then what they offer to educators. But they have this TeachingWorks resource library, and with a free login, you can go out there. And a lot of these things that you're going to see today came from that free TeachingWorks resource library. So y'all go ahead, if you want to create yourselves a login and play around in there. A lot of the things you're going to see today are coming out of that. You can pay a bunch of grant money and do the whole thing, but there's a lot you can get out of it just in their free resources. More about what we did. So this is one of their decompositions of practice. So they put a lot of thoughtfulness into taking the practice, and we started the year with really getting into eliciting, interpreting student response. We thought for step 2 with all the inquiry and the questioning, that'd be great. So we started getting into their decomposition, and they've broken questioning down into 3 chunks. Formulating the question, like coming up with the actual good question, and we do that on our lesson plans. We work hard on that with the kids. What does an open-ended question look like? And then listening to and interpreting student responses, like the kid's going to answer, how do you figure out what they mean, what's going on in their little head? And then developing additional questions, like how do you ask a follow-up question? Y'all, that's all skills in the field. So how do we practice that in the classroom? Well, also in step 1 and step 2, we're not going to get into all of this. So we just really wanted to distill this down to just maybe the top level. Hey, can you develop an open-ended question? Can you give students plenty of time to speak and allow thinking time, and then pay really close attention to what they're saying? And then can you identify elements of the students' thinking and maybe ask a follow-up question? If they could come out of step 2 doing that, win, right? That'd be amazing. So how do we get them there? Well, one of the tools that they have in resources on the free site there is called a Talk Moves and Back Pocket Questions sheet. There's a Talk Moves and Back Pocket Questions tool. And so what we did is we created our own little decomposition, a little cheat sheet for our step 2 kids about Talk Moves and Back Pocket Questions. And you have this in your folder. It means, have you already shared the link for the folder?
Katie, I don't think I have, because I think by the time you got done with your PowerPoint, I didn't have a URL. So if you wanted to add that.
Okay. So
I don't think I saw it in the slide that you sent yesterday to me.
Okay. So I'm going to give you this, and you're going to have it soon.
I told them that at the end, or maybe in an email that's sent out later on. We'll definitely share everything with them.
So this is all in the folder if you want to use it in your class. So sorry about that. So what is a talk move? So a talk move is just a prompt that you use during each element of the 5E model to help you get your students to share their ideas. It's going to help make students' thinking visible, help them refine their ideas. So let's say that you ask a straight up question and they gave you an answer. To say something like, well, why do you believe that's true? Or can you give me some data to back up your thinking? These follow-up questions are talk moves. They help to press students for explanations and justification. In math, you want to expand and clarify their thinking. You can get the right answer for the wrong reason in math really easy. So these are some things that you want to think through. Either way, they're a tool to help make your students' thinking clear, but they don't really come intuitively to your step 2 kids. So what we did is we had them read go through the decomposition in class and read them and like highlight some that they thought they could work on, which would feel natural to you. So you can see we're even for step 2, even though we gave them the whole list, we're gonna kind of hold off and just have them practice a couple at a time. So that's talk moves and back pocket questions. Back pocket questions, hang on. A back pocket question is just a tool that you use in small group. Like these are the questions that they might write in their engage, their 5E part of their, in their explore. The questions that you're going to go around to every table and ask the same questions. So you're getting the big picture of the entire room. So they're the questions you have in your back pocket, you pull them out, and at each table you ask the same 4 questions to kind of test the waters. So that's the definition of talk moves, and that's the definition of back pocket questions. All right, so follow-up questions. So I'll tell you how we set up the lesson. All right. So we have a note catcher slide tool that we're gonna play for you. So ambitious science teaching videos are free and they're public use. You can go out to ambitious science teaching, just Google ambitious science teaching and find these. This is from the middle school, one of the middle schools in their classics video series. It's free and available. And I'll give you the video and the timestamps in the box folder. And I hope they're working for you better than they're working for me this morning when you get them. So let me go back to PowerPoint here, y'all. I'm sorry. So what we were going to do is we were going to watch a master teacher as she shared out the content. And she is sharing out the content with her students and doing just a great job. She's doing the talk moves, she's doing the back pocket questions, but there's also an equity moment that happens in this slide. And so what we were going to do is like show y'all, let y'all practice with the tool. You're going to have a copy of the tool, so sorry for that. But you will notice when you do the tool that there on both of these videos, there is a hardcore moment where you're like, dude, that was an equity issue that came up in the questioning series. Well, the beautiful thing about the Teaching Works materials is they all have an equity lens that they focus on. On their sheet, if you're looking at their sheet, advancing justice with talk moves is a little blurb on there. And talking about how asking questions can be made more equitable in your classroom. You know, sometimes student teachers are really, they're like, oh, okay, well, they might just go, oh, that's wrong. And you're like, oh, or they might just go, oh yeah, okay. I mean, really the way they're answering the students without any follow-up or dismissing their ideas, it can sometimes have equity implications. So we emphasize this with our kids, but when they watch the video the first time, they have no idea that we're going to be talking about equity. And so what we do is we set this up in the lesson as a discussion board in our class. So we show them the videos like carte blanche, there's 2 different instances, a math one and a science one. And we can give you the science one where they are going to set this up. And we talk to them, hey, this is going to be, you are safe here. You can say what you want to say. This is a place where we can share our ideas, and the students give each other feedback on the discussion board. They have to comment on another couple of students' posts, but this is what we tell them. You've got 2 jobs. You're going to watch the videos and you're going to tell us what you notice and wonder about them. And then we're going to stop it at a certain point. And it's right after the teacher asks the question and there's a student that is either reluctant to answer the question or seems belligerent in some way, just that it could be interpreted as belligerent. And we stop it right there. And we say, we're going to talk in class next time about what just happened. And that's all we tell them. What we were really, not really shocked to find when we used this discussion board about eliciting student response is how often the students shut down any learning or any science or math learning that was going on in the classroom because they saw it as a classroom management issue. These are some quotes that we took off our discussion board. You know, I noticed in the first clip, while the teacher created a safe space for the students to try to figure out the problem, one of the students was pretty rude and non-constructive in their responses. And it was a situation where one girl was presenting and another girl actually knew the right answer and got so excited about it that she was a little rude. And it takes courage. I wonder why the teacher didn't interject after the first comment. And then another about the same video. I think the question made by Tony could be disregarded and what the focus should be on Anaya. And so basically they wanted to use discipline and completely disregard a student's response that happened in the video. Same thing here. The teacher could have told Tony that his comments weren't helpful, were actually harmful. Can you imagine telling a student their comment was harmful when it was the right answer in front of a class? And then in the other video, Henry seems to be not interested as some of his classmates, and he doesn't seem to want to participate, and that ended up not being the case at all. So it kind of turns it around on the students and gives us an equity moment to discuss as we proceed, as well as a questioning moment. So the students watch the videos in class, And the next day we come in and we have the equal versus equitable slide up. And we set up our notebooks and we talk about the difference between equal and equitable. And this is really, it's not the first time. In step one, I know Pam's on the call. Pam has done a great job. They're working on some more of the social emotional learning piece of it in step one. And there is they have another one of the eliciting the high-end practices, the high yield practices that they're working on. That's more about student interaction and developing relationships with students working on. So we are really the first little equity, named equity piece that they get. So we just start off with the basics. Hey, this is the definition of equity. And then we have a talk where we study the decomposition that we gave you. We give them the definitions of talk moves and back pocket questions. We rewatch the videos, but this time we watch the end and watch what the master teacher does and how she pulls responses out of the kids, and she doesn't make it a discipline issue. It's just a beautiful thing to watch. And then we talk about the benefits for students and teachers with the questioning and the equity connection. And so our notebook slide looks like this. And again, we'll give you the notebook templates and everything. How does using questions like talk moves and back pocket questions help the teacher? How does it help the students? What's the benefits to all of the students of a teacher who knows how to skillfully use these moves? And so that's how we set it up. And that's a big discussion. We have some of the most rich discussions in class after that you can imagine. At least that's been our experience. This was the first little piece of this that we did, and we were just amazed at how that opened up and how we were studying a deep practice like questioning, but the equity lens just sort of came into focus for the students. I mean, do you want to say anything about that, about how it went in math?
Sure. So as far as logistics, there's a couple of things I would say. If you are planning on doing something similar, once we do share the information, I strongly encourage you to think about the discussion itself. As Katie stated, make sure students understand this is a safe place for us to share our thoughts and ideas. You have to have that conversation, because that discussion for us, it's technically permanent. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So the way we set up our discussion, students cannot actually go back and change their original post that they created. And we wanted to do that very intentionally. We didn't want them to, based on their peers, go back and change. We wanted them to kind of think about what they're observing, and then they can definitely change their mind later on, but whatever they write initially, that thread is going to be there for the peers to look at. So when they see a handful of students focusing on classroom management and how that student's rude, but then they see other students going, that's not really how they're perceived. The big conversation is, as humans, we tend to read sometimes too much into certain things, and we tend to make some assumptions like Tony has a problem with a different student, when matter of fact, when they actually interviewed the two students, they had no issues with each other. The fact that Anaya actually wanted to support the question that Tony asked was probably the one question that a math teacher would ask, but it was just an elementary student laughing a little bit. So the question is, as teachers, what do we focus on? And the point of this activity is for us as teachers to sometimes go, okay, you know what, I understand, or you might think that there's a classroom management issue, which to me, an elementary classroom, that really was not an issue. But what can you do to drive the conversation forward in terms of the objectives that you have? So just like Katie said, we have really some great conversations, but make sure that students feel comfortable and safe to have these. And just like what we tell our students, having that classroom environment where they feel comfortable, just have some of those conversations before, because it can get, if you don't do that, I can definitely see some students become defensive because they might feel like, hey, I'm different from everyone else. And so just have some of those conversations with your students.
So after we embed these in the coursework, we have them do a couple of things. We have them write these questions. We have them develop back pocket questions and talk moves and write them into their lesson plans. So we start using the vocabulary in class. They're like, oh, miss, I wrote this talk move. Come look at my talk move. Do you think these will be okay? And they're like, oh, what back pocket question should I use for my Explorer this time? And we have this like common vocabulary that develops, and we can always go back to the decomposition. The decomposition has sentence stems for them that help them create talk moves. It's like a baby's first guide to talk moves and back pocket questions that you can just go and you can borrow sentence stems off there. So it's been great for our lessons. So this is one of the things I got for my final project this semester. And she said, for questioning strategies, we ask back pocket questions to stimulate the connections between explore and explain. Whoa, I've got step 2 students thinking about using questioning to bridge explore and explain. That makes me excited. And so she goes, so they talked about nebula. So how do you tie it back to the star cycle, and where would that be placed on the HR diagram? So they're starting to make the connections about how to use these in a lesson and where they go in a lesson. And we thought that was a huge win when that happened. So not only did it up our game with eliciting student response, we got to thinking, so how could we use this with easier things? I mean, eliciting student thinking is huge, and equity is this huge big picture. And that was a beautiful change that we're making in step 2. And we plan to integrate that. In fact, we taught a similar lesson to this in CI because we knew the step 2 students, the students in CI hadn't had it in step 2 because we just invented it. So what about simple stuff? What about what about like the classroom management stuff we put on our Jamboard earlier, like just having a conversation or remembering to pick up your materials or giving basic directions. We brainstormed, and one of the activities that TeachingWorks had us do was film a piece of ourselves coaching kids through giving directions. And we were like, okay, so what are the steps in giving clear directions? So we made a decomposition for giving clear directions in step 2. We were like, 1, make sure all your students were listening, use a quiet signal, 2. So we broke it down as master teachers. We got together, we made a clear directions decomposition. And then in class, before they went out to teach their second lesson, we gave them a scenario, and this was our scenario. You're a 9th grade science or math teacher. Your students are collecting data at 4 stations. You got to give them the directions, and they're doing station work. And so we had our students read the scenario. They got into pairs at tables. They wrote some directions and talked about what they were going to say to their students. And then we randomly picked one person. We called them up to the front, and we had them give the directions. And we would stop them. We go, stop. All right, I really liked what they did here. Or stop. Let's talk about this as a group. What else could you have done? Are there other ways that you could do this? Or stop. We can't do that. Let's do this instead. Practice it again. And so by having this live coaching piece, this practice of practice, even for simple classroom management things, we started seeing improvements in our classroom things, just simple things like clear directions. In step 1, they're talking about building respectful relationships. And I think Pam's going to talk about this more the next seminar we have. They're working on small conversations, just walking up to a student and introducing themselves and saying, how are you? Asking them about themselves. Hey, how's it going today? So there's a TeachingWorks decomposition for that in the Teaching Resources website. So building respectful relationships with students, just from walking up and saying hi all the way into some building respectful relationships. We're just going to be the tip of the iceberg for them. In PBI, one of the things that we're doing is our kids were crashing and burning on their nose and needs to knows list. They would just get up there and go, okay, what do you need to know? All right. And the kids would tell them, we need to know how many pages long this is going to be. And they never get to the content piece. And we were like, whoa, we need to decompose the knows and needs to knows list. So we did that. I've got a knows and needs to knows decomposition that I'm working on. That may not be in there yet because we're still tweaking that baby. This was the first semester we did it. But we also have added some things into our observations. We did this in both step 2 and in PBI. In step 2, what we did was in their second observation, instead of just sitting and watching the teacher, we had them email the teacher beforehand, get the standard that they were going to cover that day, and make a list of like 3 back pocket questions. And their job was, when the teacher broke them into small groups, they were supposed to go around and help practice asking some back pocket questions, which was great. We got some great response from that. They came back. They were not scared talking to kids because they'd been in those small groups. And when they went out for the second lesson, so much better, right? So much better interacting with the groups and talking to kids. In PBI, since they're further along in the course, during their observation, we gave them this list. We go, you can choose. You can give quality directions. You can ask the teacher if you can give the directions that day. You can ask if you can do some eliciting questioning, do some back pocket questions and talk moves, or you can try leading a discussion. And there are decompositions for all those out on the TeachingWorks site. So we let them pick which one they wanted to choose, and they actually did some active practicing during their observation piece. And we found that that's really helped kind of get the kinks out before they do their big lesson further on in the year. So that's what our active practices look like. So we're trying to scaffold that through the program, starting just itty bitty couple sentences in step 1, hey, a couple of questions in step 2. We're working on CI. In CI, we've just been pretty much redoing what we did in step 1 and step 2 because these kids haven't ever had it before. We're developing what that looks like in CI, but that equity lens may be a huge piece of that. And then kind of weaving this practice throughout the program. So here's what you do. You pick a high leverage practice that speaks to you, or really even a low leverage practice if you want to start simply with that, something like giving directions. Then you check out the Teaching Works website. They may have a resource out there where they have a decomposition already, or you create your own. You sit down with the master teachers and you're like, what are the very concrete steps in doing this action that my kids are having trouble with? Then, hey, introduce it, give them a definition, some exact steps to follow, a protocol that they can use to make it really simple and break it down for them. Emphasize the equity. There's an equity piece to almost everything we do, an equity lens to that you can find. Find a way to practice it before any real students are harmed. I mean, like that phrase, we don't want to harm any real students. We want to practice in the classroom with each other, with us as coaches before we go out. And then you're going out in the field. So maybe just try a little toe dip in enacting that with real students, maybe in an observation, and then reflect on that. And that'll help you refine the lesson that you're actually going to go out and teach when you teach your big lesson. So that's how we sort of took the idea of practice and wove it into the UTeach model. So now we want to hear from you. What has inspired you? And again, I've made a Jamboard, and Amin's gonna throw out the Jamboard in there, but this is tiny URL. So what about you? Have you done similar things like this? We want to hear about it. The group wants to hear about it. Maybe you already have things going that you could share that you've done with practice-based instruction in your UTeach classroom. We'd certainly like to know. And then maybe what are some ideas of just like, what would you like to try? What would you like to do? So let's just get an idea generation board going. I am gonna give y'all a few minutes to get there and start generating ideas. And then let's have some talk about generating ideas. And I'll let you have a few minutes to think. All right, so everybody, welcome back from the discussion. We had a great discussion in my room about where you can do this and where it fits in the different levels. One of the things that I loved, and I may just have some groups share out. Do we have 3 groups, 4 groups? 3 groups. Okay, so somebody want to share out from group 1, like what was y'all's takeaway? What did y'all talk about? Do you have some great ideas for us?
Sure.
Thanks, Rebecca.
We talked about all the various field courses and how a lot of us are using like lesson demos or teaching to peers and those sorts of things. And so that gives us opportunity to practice some of these things. We mentioned that I think somebody wrote on this Jamboard, and that kind of has the idea that we were talking about, that you focus on the 5 E's, or you kind of go through all 5 of the E's in your practice, and that these ideas that we've talked about today are more targeted. So we talked a little bit about that. And we had other conversations that I may have missed something.
Okay. So one of the things that I loved that we said in our room was like, everybody was like, oh, these decompositions, if you've got one for this and I've got one for this, if we started thinking about these small chunks of practice, it's like the scaffolding, these tiny chunks of practice, could we swap decompositions? Like you've got one on knows and needs to knows, you've got one on, somebody had one on launching lessons in PBI. I was like, oh, I want that one. Let's get together and share some decomposition. So I think that'd be a fun thing to do, like find out what everybody's doing little chunks of practice on and sharing. What about group 2?
So we started talking about the sentence stems for the back pocket questions. I think that was one of my main takeaways, because I was thinking of back pocket questions a little bit differently. And then we started picking Amin's mind about the pre-planning guide that he uses in his step classes. And I think I'm going to adopt some of that as well. So I look forward to seeing that in the folder to get a better visual of what's going on there.
Yeah, if you talked about anything that we have that you want to see in that folder, just let us know and we'll make sure that's available for everybody, for sure. All right, what about last group?
I just want to share, Kenneth had a great idea. When I look at all those back pocket questions and I think about step 1, Maybe targeting, one or two to have them practice
Mhm.
as they move around the room. Kenneth's idea was good that he uses that. He said he didn't know for sure if they had them in their back pocket or not, but they certainly practiced them in the classroom first. And
Put
it
them
gave
on your
them
hand.
confidence.
Yeah, we like the decomp, but we found out really quickly that it was a little overwhelming for them. And so we just said, all right, take out your highlighter, highlight your favorite two or whatever. And it would be great to like literally put them on a card or something and literally have them be back pocket questions. So I love that. Yeah.
I actually give them a card, but then I never see it again after I hand it out in class, unfortunately.
What washing machine filter it ends up in, we will never know, but we're trying to scaffold those babies, right?
I mean, I like that terminology of back pocket because that makes it clear that, no, I intend for you to, literally have this in your back pocket and pull it out. So I like that.
Mhm.
I like that new vocabulary.
Yeah, well, part of this sort of stemmed from us just thinking they're scared to go talk to kids in small groups. They're scared to go talk to kids. They're coming up to the kids and they're saying, "Are you okay? How's everything going? Is it going?" And no. So this has really gotten them away from that and pushed them towards the content, like learning this little talk moves back pocket questions practice thing. It's definitely helped their interaction. So I would like to propose a decomposition swamp. We've got this folder here. You guys you can all get into this folder. If y'all want to throw something in there, feel free to throw something in. This is hey, we decided to decomp X or Y or Z. Here's what we did. Throw it in there. We would love to see what you've got. The coaching aspect, I can put a little thing about the coaching in there. We're just practicing that part, just starting that part. So more about that later. But all in all, we've really enjoyed using the workshop and the resources off the Teaching Works website. So take a look at that. There's there's videos, there's all kinds of things that are out there that you can use as models for your students about high quality teachers doing these, or transcripts, things like that. And then a whole lot of the decompositions and the high yield practices and more about them. So anyway, let me see if anybody put anything on page 2.
And Katie, can I do something? Can I have you, and I'll be on the hot seat, so I'll ask them if they have some questions while you do this. Will you go ahead and find that link for the box and then drop it into our chat?
Yes, I will.
And then as she's doing that, what questions do you have based on what was presented? And like I said, I'll be on the hot seat. If I can't answer, I'll just yield the floor to Katie, but I'll try my best to answer. So you can either unmute or just put it in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to either help you or maybe something that you're thinking about and you have questions about.
So I really liked that idea of having the mentors being on the same page with the vocabulary. So how do you go about getting them familiar with talk moves and back pocket strategies?
So we tend to meet with them right before semester starts. So this semester, we actually got a chance to meet with them face-to-face. In the previous ones, we've done Zoom calls or Blackboard or Teams. During that, anytime we have new ideas, so this time, of course, talking about back pockets and talk moves, we actually show them the document, and and then every time we have conversations with them, we create a folder just like what Katie's doing with all the documents, and we tend to kind of go through. So we spend about 30 minutes in what type of feedback, what type of focus we're looking at this semester. So for example, we want them to circulate, we want them to ask questions, we want them to use some type of an attention getter. So we have conversations about what they should be looking for as they are teaching when the students are observing, and to have that common terminology. So if there's something brand new, we tend to have those conversations. So again, it's not in depth. We would like to definitely have like a half a day or full day, but we do give them those documents, and then we have conversations about what terminology our students will be using, the terminology that's used in the documents itself, and then for us to have that common vocabulary.
Okay, I just dropped the tiny URL, and that is going to take you into the workshop. It has the one video there, and it's about 9 minutes. Between 9 and 12 minutes was a little section that we were going to show you, so I'm sorry about that. It's got the decomposition, both for a listing and student response, and the one that Pam's going to do later. So if you want to sort of pre-look at that decomp, those are the detailed ones from ThinkingWorks, not little simple ones. It also has the step 2 talk moves tool that we made for our kids with all the sentence stems on it. All the note catchers are in there. And then the equity picture and the whole PowerPoint, the PDF of the whole PowerPoint. So all of that is in there for you. So we're about 2 minutes out. Hang on, let me pop the PowerPoint back up and we will finish up here. Hopefully you got at least a few things to take away today that you can use in your step 2 rooms or your CI rooms. So I am katie.donaldson at utdallas.edu. And I am not alone in this work. We have a lot, these are the master teachers that help work with me to get this program.
Sorry, Katie, you might want to put up your PowerPoint. We're not seeing anything on our end. Oh, you know what? Oh, you know what? Actually, you know what? No, you're fine. You're fine. My screen.
I can see the green boxes around it. Don't tell me.
My screen glitched out, so you are good. Okay. I apologize. Disregard that.
So Pam and Emily are working on decomps for step 1 and on that first section of the social emotional learning piece. And then Pam and Denise and Amin and I all teach step 2 and worked through this and got all this refined together. And then Kate and I work on the PBI pieces and got all those PBI pieces together. So anyway, so that's the team. I don't want you to think that I did this by myself. And then just for funsies, if you like my slides that look like birthday funfetti cupcakes, I did not do that by myself either. That slide carnival, I'm learning to use all these fun slide templates because my step 2 kids are using them and I've been geeking out and having fun with those. They're really cool. So if you want to use that, that's slide carnival. And that's all I got for y'all today. So I hope you've got some things to take home and some things to use. So anyway, y'all have a wonderful day and go forth and think about things to decomp and then send them to us and stick them in that folder. So we would love that.